What if I told you there was a man who dared to challenge Arnold Schwarzenegger with logical arguments and a philosophy that seemed plucked from the mind of a Greek philosopher? A man who not only changed the way we train, but also dared to publicly say that everyone was training wrong. That pain, sweat, and sacrifice meant absolutely nothing if not guided by reason. A bodybuilder who didn't believe in empty reps or endless routines, but in one thing, the truth. Today I bring you the story of the warrior who was marginalized for thinking differently. The bodybuilder who not only had muscle, but also revolutionary ideas that made even the greatest His name, Mike Mentzer. And this isn't just his story. It's also the birth of a philosophy that shook the foundations of modern bodybuilding. Get ready, because this isn't just training. This is heavy duty. The early years and the mind behind the muscle. Mike Mentzer wasn't born among weights. He was born with a mind obsessed with logic. From a very young age, Mike didn't just read bodybuilding magazines. He also devoured books on philosophy, psychology, biology, and formal logic. He studied at university to become a psychiatrist. But fate had other plans, because what truly fascinated him was understanding how the body worked and how to make it evolve intelligently. At 11 years old, while many children were playing, Mike was already training with homemade cement weights in his garage. And he didn't do it like a madman. No, he did it by observing, taking notes, correcting. He was methodical, even obsessive. And from that age, he already had a clear idea. Training without thinking is the same as failing with style. Young Mike admired the great bodybuilders of the time, but with one difference. He didn't idolize them. He analyzed their methods, questioned them, and little by little, he began to notice something that no one dared to say. Why do so many bodybuilders train for hours and still make no progress? Why doesn't anyone talk about recovery? What if this whole system is poorly designed from the start? And so, the seed of rebellion began to take shape. The birth of a philosophy that challenged the system while everyone was parroting what the magazines were saying. Mike Mentzer was creating something entirely different. A system based on logical analysis, science, and objectivity. Not on myths, not on sensations, not on copying others. He would later call it heavy duty. But before naming his philosophy, Mike was already building more than just muscle. His mind was deeply influenced by the objectivist philosophy of Ayn Rand, an author who taught that reality exists independently of feelings, and reason is the only tool human beings have to understand it. That left its mark on him. Mike thought, if we train only because we feel we should train more, we're lost. Progress doesn't come from doing more, but from doing the right thing at the right time. And so, slowly, he began to build his idea. A short, intense, and precise workout sets to real muscle failure. Not out of ego focus on deep recovery, not volume, mental toughness, rationality, and discipline over repeating inertia, and most importantly, a complete war against traditional routines that only wear down without building. He didn't want to be just strong. He wanted to be logical, to be consistent, to be true. And that's why he broke all the rules. The muscle rebellion and the war against the system in the late 1970s, bodybuilding was governed by a single model: train more, double shifts, 4 hours a day, endless sets, pain as a banner. The motto was clear: if you're not destroyed, you're useless. And then along comes a 5'7" man, with muscles carved like marble, perfect symmetry, and a mind sharper than a blade. A man who said things like, overtraining is the worst enemy of growth, and you're practicing it like a religion. Mike Mentzer introduced himself to the bodybuilding elite with a new weapon. While others did 20 sets per muscle, he did 2 or 3. While they trained 6 days a week, he did it 3 times, or even just once. While others relied on volume, he relied on controlled intensity. He didn't train for emotion. He trained with a surgical strategy. Others looked at him with ridicule. They said, that crazy guy will never get anywhere training like that. Until, he hit the stage. The change nitrogen monoxide one expected. Mentzer in competition in 1976, Mike Mentzer began competing seriously, and within 2 years, he shook the bodybuilding world. His peak came in 1979, when he won the Mr. Universe with a perfect score, 300 out of 300, something no one else has ever achieved. The judges couldn't believe it. He had classic symmetry, monstrous volume, ideal proportions, and brutal definition. And all of this, while training much less than everyone else. That's when the world started listening. He was no longer just the gym philosopher. Now he was the champion with real results. And Mike didn't shut up. In interviews he said things like, muscles don't understand reps or hours. They only respond to precise stimuli and sufficient recovery. Real growth happens outside the gym. Training more than necessary is as absurd as watering a plant every 5 minutes and then wondering why it rots. Boom. That was dynamite for the system. The conflict with Arnold and the Weiders system, and like any great rebel, his voice didn't please the Mike directly clashed with the Weiders system, the creators of the traditional model of bodybuilding. Joe Weider was the most powerful businessman in the fitness world, owner of magazines, supplements, an organizer of the Mr. Olympia, and of course, he had his golden champion, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold represented everything Mike hated. Eternal 2-3 hour routines, training based on feeling and pumps, not analysis. A do more, always more approach, and a public persona molded to be an idol, not a logical one. Mentzer, on the other hand, wasn't looking for applause. He was looking for the truth. And the truth, often, is uncomfortable. In 1980, the most controversial moment of his career arrived. Mike entered the Mr. Olympia, and his physique was so brutal that even other competitors knew he could win. But that year, Arnold unexpectedly returned to the stage to compete, and, against all odds and not in his best shape, he won. Mike finished fifth. It wasn't just an emotional blow, it was a public betrayal. He knew what had happened, and he said it without fear. It was a robbery. I will not be part of a corrupt system that rewards name over merit. And so, at just 29 years old, Mike Mentzer retired from competitive bodybuilding. He did so at the height of his physical fitness, with a form that is still admired today. But even though he left the stage, he never stopped fighting. The birth of heavy duty as a movement over time, Mentzer dedicated himself to perfecting his philosophy. He wrote books like Heavy Duty and High Intensity Training, The Mike Mentzer Way, where he taught the world his method based on principles of objective reason, physiological efficiency, and real growth. What he proposed was simple, but radical: don't train more than necessary. Go to muscle failure at maximum intensity, a single set per exercise. Train fewer times per week and let your body fully recover. Don't copy routines. Think, reason, analyze, do it right, or don't do it at all, he said. It's not the quantity of work, but its quality that stimulates growth. And although many called him crazy, more and more people began to try his system, and the results were real. The price of thinking differently but being the one who breaks the rules comes at a price. Mike was marginalized by mainstream magazines, forgotten by the industry, and in many cases he had difficult times, battled addiction, and suffered deeply as he watched the industry ignore logic in favor of marketing and mindless volume. But he never gave up. Until the last day of his life, he continued training people, writing, teaching, defending his truth. A week before he died, he was recording a series of videos explaining the principles of heavy duty to leave behind as a legacy. Because Mike didn't want to be remembered just as a bodybuilder. He wanted to be remembered as a thinker, a revolutionary, an iron philosopher, the legacy of a rebel with a cause. Mike Mentzer wasn't just a bodybuilder. He was a flame in the midst of a system of smoke, a man who dared to think, to question, and to challenge what everyone accepted as truth. While others said do more, he asked, why? And that small word changed everything. He retired young. Yes, he was marginalized by the system. Yes, he was rejected by many, but he never betrayed his principles. Because his fight wasn't for trophies. It was for something more important. For logic, for health, for true growth. Today, decades after his death, thousands of people follow his teachings. Because when a philosophy is born from truth, time doesn't bury it, it multiplies it. Mike left us more than just muscle. He left us a message that continues to resonate in every person who trains intelligently. Intensity is the key, rest is the secret, and thinking is the only way to evolve. Chapter 2 Preview. The birth of heavy duty against the grain of classical training. Now that you know who Mike Mentzer was, in the next chapter, we'll delve into the ins and outs of the system he created. We'll see how he developed, step by step, the birth of heavy duty. How did he design each principle as if it were a mathematical formula? Why did he say that training more than necessary is like trying to grow by screaming? What was the difference between intensity and volume? And why did his philosophy become a direct threat to the entire industry? Get ready, bro, because in Chapter 2 we dive into the creation of the system that would change the history of bodybuilding forever. Heavy duty is not a routine, it's a revolution. Ready to continue?